You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Andy Clark. He's an author of a book called Getting the Whole Pie, How to Create More Profit, Impact, and Enjoyment in Your Small Business. So he's a best-selling author and a business strategist behind the Whole Pie System, trademark term. He helps small business owners build companies that are more profitable, impactful, and enjoyable instead of a miserable, never-ending 80-hour-a-week slog. I guess to put my own spin on it. So welcome, Andy. Thanks for coming.
All right, Richard. Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background. Were you, I would guess, you probably run businesses before and were kind of sucked into maybe a self-created job and then found a way to systematize your way out. But I don't know. What's your background?
Yeah, I practiced law for about a dozen years. So I was a business lawyer. I'm Canadian. For the listener, just to provide some context, I spent all my professional life in Canada until about 4 years ago when my wife and I decided to move our 4 kids and ourselves to Costa Rica. So I'm coming to you today from Costa Rica, but I practiced law for about a dozen years, worked with a lot of small business owners, and I found that I was a lot more interested kind of in business than I was in advising businesses from a legal perspective. So I decided to jump over into business and ran and managed businesses in healthcare and in financial services for about the next 10 years, and just was always kind of baffled at how smart people that worked so hard could be so frustrated most of the time, and that, in the running of their businesses, including myself, and just kind of thought there had to be a better way. And so about 7-8 years ago, I just started digging in. What is the best way to run a small business? Why do we keep having all these problems and issues, people problems and process problems and alignment problems? And why are business owners unhappy? And why are employees unhappy? And so that's kind of what led me to it, Richard. And then, slowly but surely, I put together this framework, which I call the Whole Pie System. Like, we can kind of dig into a bit more into the bells and whistles of the system, but that's kind of the path that led me to try to help business owners be more profitable, be more impactful, and enjoy the process of running a small business to a greater degree.
Yeah, we'll go into that. What is the pie system? What are some of the tenets of it?
Yeah, well, so I guess the big idea behind it is, what I discovered was that a business is just sort of like any kind of organism that involves humans. And it, unless you do some specific things to counter it, entropy will surface and things will get disorganized. That's just kind of the natural order of things. And so you have to be conscious about countering that entropy, right? And what happens is small businesses that have some success is they get this success paradox, which is to say that, there's money coming in the door, they've got customers and things are going pretty well, but that's the result of that success is an increased level of complexity. And most small business owners aren't really trained to handle that complexity as their business grows. And they're not really trained to put the structure and system in place to be able to counter that entropy, right? What they see a lot of times is, communications break down, priorities aren't aligned, processes get fragmented, there's friction between their people. And a business owner, the result of that is how did I get here? I'm not as happy as I used to be when things were sort of smaller and nimble. I'm kind of the victim of my own success as a business owner. So that's kind of the big idea behind putting a structure in place in the small business to counter that entropy, to counter that success paradox, to allow the business then to scale to the next level.
You're right. When things get complicated, it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it comes down to the people interacting and, this one doesn't like this one, or this one's slow walking that, or this one, really should be fired because they're just not listening. And sometimes our customers are acting up. It just, sometimes it feels like you're a babysitter,
Yeah. So, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, it sounds like you're speaking from experience, and, a lot of the frustration or a lot of the lack of enjoyment in business comes from people problems. But most, if not all, people problems are avoidable. And there's the tools and strategies in the book around that. Like, you're probably always going to have a few people problems in your business, but it doesn't need to cause you so much frustration that you're pulling your hair out. It doesn't need to sap all the enjoyment from your business. I actually say in the book, when I get to the people section of the book, I say, oftentimes you ask a business owner, what do you love most about your business? And what do you think they say? They say the people.
It's freedom,
right?
Oh, the people.
A lot of times they say the people. And okay, what frustrates you most about your business? And it's the same answer. Oftentimes it's the people. So, people can be the best part about your business, or they can suck the life out of you. And as I said, there are things you can do to set yourself up for success on the people front of your business.
I remember the Muppets Take Manhattan from 30 years ago, and this deli owner was like, peoples are peoples. It's people's working, it's people's. Is it? And, Kermit was like, what?
Borsky. I remember that guy in the Muppets.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about kind of the other thing that I discovered. I talked about, the need to systematize in order to counter that complexity and to scale to the next level. But what I also discovered, like you, Richard, you've talked to, thousands of experts in all different fields. And I talked to and experienced and worked with business owners, hundreds of them over the years. And when you ask a business owner, what are your goals? What it is that you want? What are you trying to achieve? And what I learned was that invariably the answer to that question was something that either related to profit or, the money side of their business. It related to impact, which is making people's lives better in some way. And that could be your customers' lives through your products or services. It could be your employees' lives, your community as a whole through charitable donations or volunteering or things like that. Or it relates to how much you're enjoying the process of owning and operating your business. So, for example, if I say, what do you want to achieve in your business this year or this quarter? And a business owner would say, I want to, 2x my revenue this year or 2x sales or something like that. All right. That's clearly a money goal. That's profit. Or they might say, I really want this product or service. Let's say it's software, right? Like I really want our customer reviews, let's say, to go from a 3-star to a 4-star or something like that. Right. So you're actually measuring that your customers, you're improving your customers' lives in a measurable way. And that could be a goal. And then the enjoyment side, goals could be, I'm frustrated by my people problems. I'm working way too much. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not enjoying things. So the answers could be put in the enjoyment bucket, because frustration and overwhelm are kind of like the other side of enjoyment. And so that really hit me that anything that somebody is trying to do in their business can fall into one of those 3 buckets. And therefore, it occurred to me, why not build a system that is intentional about pursuing goals, pursuing priorities in all 3 of those areas simultaneously? Because if the focus is solely on money, well, then, impact, enjoyment can suffer, not all the time, but they can suffer if there's not enough intention and focus in those areas. And it happens, the other way. If the focus is, hey, I want to play golf 7 days a week and, check my emails once a month and, talk to customers never. Yeah, that's probably not going to be really good for impact or profit if it helps with your enjoyment. So the big idea is it's like a 3-legged stool. And if you're putting too much emphasis in any one area, things aren't going to go the way you want. So that's what really the system is designed around, is being really intentional in those 3 areas. And then what are the best practices that will help you achieve higher levels of profit, impact, and enjoyment?
Okay. I mean, the impact, I don't know. I guess, people will be focused on profit first, enjoyment second, or maybe there's a mix of those 2. But impact, that seems like it comes when everything else is dialed in. I mean, how many people does that come early on for?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I actually, one business owner that I work with that comes to mind right away, the whole thing, his whole view of his business shifted when he really got dialed into the impact. So the difference that he wanted to make in his customers' lives. He actually ran a coaching business where he was both coaching directly, but also recruiting other coaches and doing leadership development and all kinds of stuff like that. And when he really got dialed in on the actual impact that he was creating through his business to his end clients, that actually allowed him to kind of shift some of his priorities to be more customer focused. And what he found was that was the trigger that unlocked greater profitability. And that's not an isolated case, because really when you think about it, Richard, like, why do people buy your products or services? They buy them because it makes their life better in some way, either for 5 minutes or for 5 hours or for 5 months or forever, but it makes their life better in some way. And so I really encourage businesses, and I work with them to really define what that difference is that they make in their customers' lives. And the more value and the more difference you can make, it really naturally follows that more customers are then going to want to do business with you. And that is a big lever of profitability. So you would think that impact is kind of maybe third in line or at best second, but it's actually where we start. Unless the business owner that I work with is totally miserable, we start with enjoyment and figuring out why he's miserable or she's miserable. But otherwise, we start with impact, and we really quantify what that difference is that you're making in your customers' lives.
Well, what's an example of impact that you thought was really cool beyond some generic, statement for a business?
Yeah. So I work, one that comes to mind is I work with an automatic car wash business. It's like the biggest brand in the biggest independent car wash brand in Canada, actually. They're all of their locations happen to be in Atlantic Canada, which is on the east coast of Canada, where I spent most of my life. And where they really got dialed in on impact was like, you think like washing your car in an automatic car wash, like what could be less impactful for that, right? On the surface, you just go and you wash a car and you get on with your day. But when you really dig into it, it's like, what is the value of that service? And the business owner that I worked with was really focused on the amount of time. What he's really doing with his business isn't washing cars. I mean, it is, but what's the benefit of having that car washed? And one of those benefits is saving time. So you could spend a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon, washing your car in your yard, and if you wanted to, or you could take 5 minutes and you could go through the rubber duck car wash and get your car washed. And then you save an hour and 55 minutes, let's say, that you can reinvest in, playing with your kids or doing other things. And so it really got serious in quantifying, the amount of time that their services save their customers, and actually put it right on their website. Similarly with gallons of water saved in communities, because car washes actually use way less water than if people do it individually on their own. So it's these kinds of things, Richard, that you can really dig into. This is the impact that we're having on our customers and on our communities. And what you find is, if you're really clear on that and you can really communicate that effectively to your customers, that they're going to be more drawn to you and buy more of your services, which then impacts or it leads to greater profitability.
Well, for the car wash, though, I mean, yes, they're saving water. So do you put up like a banner or a counter, like, we saved ABC City 46 gallons last week by washing your car here instead of at home?
Yeah,
what do you do with it?
What do you do with that information? I mean, it's websites, part of messaging in the community. It's part of their social media, talking points and things like that. And in fact, there was actually a water shortage in one of their locations where they operated over the summer. It was a dry summer, and people wondered, well, hey, there's this water shortage. Why can this car wash be open? But that was the reason why. It was because it actually, they use water very efficiently in the community.
How much water would it save? Was it like half the water? Do they quantify in terms of gallons?
Yeah. Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot here now.
It was just water into the bridge.
I could guess, but I really don't know how much that savings is. Yeah.
But it's significant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, just an example of, quantifying impact, and you can really communicate with customers that way. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, what else is on your mind?
So that's the impact, and then profit is profit. I'm sure you have your own proprietary stuff. Enjoyment, I don't know, is that more about systemization and time off, or what's in the E part of the formula?
Yeah, well, it can really be anything. I'm not here to tell anybody to work more or work less, or it's up to you as a business owner to to design your own life and your own business. But what I am here for, and what I do help out business owners with, is if they can just feel that there's something off, right? They're not enjoying this business as much as they used to, or at all, or they have all these recurring frustrations in their business, and just not happy, it's just not what they thought it would be. You mentioned freedom earlier when we talked about what's the greatest part about owning business, and you would think, right, that that's one of the reasons why people get into business is the flexibility and the freedom that it should provide. But what I tend to see a lot is just the opposite. It's they feel trapped. They feel trapped by their business. All this weight on their shoulders. The business feels heavy. The payroll relies on the business owner, and I'm talking about the owner operator, smaller end of small businesses. They often put their enjoyment last. Good, hardworking risk takers, big idea people, great in the community. They sponsor the soccer teams, but oftentimes their well-being and their enjoyment comes last. And so what I'm trying to do, and what I do, is I try to give business owners permission to put that E right there beside the P and the I, not taking a backseat, not being like, okay, well, once I achieve X revenue and have X customers, can I then be happy? There's a famous, I think it's, I don't know, maybe Aristotle, I don't know who it is, but a quote that I love is happiness breeds success and not the other way around. Right. And so if you're delaying your happiness, if you're delaying your enjoyment, oftentimes you might achieve a goal, but then another goal takes its place and another goal takes its place. And all of a sudden you're 3, 5, 10 years down the road and you're like, how did I get here? I'm miserable. I haven't been taking care of myself. I'm overweight. I have health problems. My marriage is either over or it's on the rocks. I don't spend enough time with my kids. Like, all of these things can happen almost like in a heartbeat if you're not intentional about protecting that enjoyment part of your life when you're running a business. Because importantly, I think business is a part of your life. It's a big part of your life, but it's only a part of your life. And if your business isn't making your life better, then there's a problem that needs to be solved.
I don't know, any examples of people you've been able to really help achieve a big transformation in terms of just being miserable to enjoying their business?
Yeah, one that comes to mind immediately is the owner of a monthly accounting firm who was like literally overwhelmed because client acquisition wasn't her problem. There were more clients than she could handle. She's in high demand, but it was just keeping up with the expectations of clients and keeping up with client demands and trying to find people to add to her team. It was just, she was literally like super overwhelmed. And so we had to take it like right back to the studs and be like, okay, here are your total, here, these are all your clients and these are all the obligations you have for each of these clients. And this is the time commitment that you and your team is going to need to put in order to satisfy these client demands. And we resulted in a number. And then we looked at, hours in a week, and which is also a number. And then when we put those two numbers next to each other, or hours in a month, more likely, she could see like, oh my gosh, like this is impossible. It's not sustainable. I need to, change. I need to either downsize. I either need to hire a bunch of people. I need to, maybe refer clients elsewhere. Anyway, it wasn't an overnight process, but that was about 3 years ago. And I can tell you that today, more profitable and less work than ever. And actually, when we get together for our quarterly planning sessions now, it's like she's almost like bored with her business because it's running so well. So, that's like a neat transformation of complete and total chaos and overwhelm to slowly but surely implementing the system, and in this case, the whole pie system, into her business, being intentional about profit, impact, and enjoyment. And, 3 years later, it's like, some days she's like twiddling her thumbs. There's no more nights. There's no more weekends. And revenue has continued to increase.
Yeah, right. I think also, I don't know, how much do you think business people are martyrs where they would feel bad if business was just successful and relaxing? Like, there's got to be something else to this. I should be working harder, or something's wrong. Yeah, that kind of thing.
That's true. It is true. Like I said, I practiced law for a dozen years. And when you say martyr, that comes to mind. The lawyers can often be martyrs. Like, they're, in my experience, really many of them slaves to the business model of trading time for money. I think it's gotten better since I've left the practice, but that's a tough business model. As a business owner, where you're not necessarily trading time for money, once you get to that point where you are a little bit bored, that's to me a sign of success. As long as your profitability is there, that means it's a sign that you've got your team working in place, your processes are in place, you've got your KPIs or your key data metrics in place, and you should be able to, as a business owner, you should be able to get one piece of paper every week. I call it a key data tracker, and have no other information about your business other than this one sheet of paper once a week. And you should be able to know how your business is doing and if there are any problems in your business. Now, it's very rare that owners get to that point because, it's a business that they built in many cases, and they still want to keep their hands in it to a certain degree. They still want to keep busy. But I think really ambitious and innovative business owners, they get to a point, well, what's next? I have this business running pretty smoothly. I now have this spare time and hopefully a little bit of money. What else can I invest in? Where else can I spend my time to create impact and make people's lives better?
I thought, a few years ago, what does the head of Microsoft or, these huge companies do? And I realized they can't do anything except really steer the ship. They can't solder a circuit board or answer the phone. So I realized the idea would be where I'm completely redundant. If I don't come in or do any work, it's fine. Everything runs just without me completely. And that was very freeing. And I got close to that point, and I did get bored for a little while. And then unluckily, problems occurred, and now I got sucked back in. But for a while, I experienced that. But there also is guilt with it, too. It's man, I should be doing more. I don't really have to do anything now. It's I don't know. Maybe this is not good. Maybe because I don't have to do much, maybe the business is going to implode and I won't know it. And if I was there and on top of it, I would have known, and, that kind of stuff. It just seems very psychological. I wonder if I don't know. Maybe there's some people it's impossible for them to be happy, no matter what they do.
Well, yes, there is that. We all know people that they're not happy unless they're stressed. They're not content unless they're living in the world of chaos. And that's a choice that you can make. And there's not a whole lot that anyone can do to help people that are in that kind of headspace. I also do, to be totally frank, I do have a lot of, I'm thinking to business owners who will say to me, I want to get out of the weeds. I want to help me get out of the weeds. I don't want all decisions to bottleneck with me. I want to develop my people, and I want to have good processes, and I want to be able to step back. But kind of to your point, Richard, when we've had some success in that, it's very hard for business owners to step back, even if they say they want to, but it's very hard for them not to keep sort of poking at things. And, you're right. That is a psychology. And why is that? There's, I guess, lots of reasons why that might be. They just might not, maybe they don't trust their people enough. Maybe they feel as you say, they don't feel valuable if they're not sort of in the weeds and involved in everything. But, for my money, if my business could run, 90% without my involvement, and, profitability was good, I felt really good about the impact I'm making in my customers' lives, my employees' lives, my community. There's lots of things that I can do with my time that make me happy and that I enjoy. So I would love to get to a point where somebody hands me a sheet of paper once a week and I can see. It's not to say that your business is running perfectly, but it done intentionally and done the right way, you can see if it's running the way you want it to be or if there are problems. And that's a big part of the whole PI system, where we go really deep into what are those right metrics for your business that you need to be monitoring and reporting on and reviewing and taking action on weekly in your business.
Also too, if you're at the point where you don't have to do anything, if you're used to getting 20, 30 calls a day and I need your advice on this, what should we do here? And now no one's calling you, you'd feel like shit, feel useless. So I guess a lot of entrepreneurs have to be doing something or they can't take it,
Yeah. Well, most small businesses, the business owner, they are going to be involved operationally to some extent. That is the reality. So that, it's very often that, but I think importantly though, the shift needs to happen, for a business to scale appropriately. The shift needs to happen where owner operator really does step into that CEO role. And the role then becomes simply leadership, developing your people, finding the money if you need investment, sources to grow, those really high level things that only you as the business owner can do. That's where you need to operate as a business owner, not in the weeds, not fighting fires, but at that sort of 3,000, 10,000 foot view, whatever it is of your business. That's where you need to be spending the vast majority of your time. And really that's what I do when I work with business owners, is really try to initially quantify, okay, how much of your time is spent sort of in the weeds operationally, and how much of your time is spent, leading your business and working on strategy and all those things that a business needs to go to the next level. And we figure out what that number is. And then we consciously make a plan to get more and more out of the weeds, more and more into strategy and trying to find what's around the next corner and that kind of thing in a business.
Have there been any business owners that you saw they were trying, they were listening to you and all that, but you just couldn't help them? Either the industry was too crazy, or there's just factors beyond anyone's control, and you just couldn't make an impact?
Yeah, I'd say 10% or less, Richard. Like, sometimes it just doesn't resonate. Either maybe it's a personality thing, or maybe it's like you say, it's one of those people that thrives in chaos, and they might say they want to reduce the chaos, but actually they love the chaos. But really, it's business best practice, and it's hard to argue with business best practice. So a lot of the things that we do, the tools and the templates that are in the book and part of the system, I mean, they're really hard to argue against. I gathered them into the system. I came up with a few of my own to add in, but a lot of this stuff has been around, right? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Michael Gerber and Jim Collins and John Doerr and others. Like, if you're going to say that what I'm telling you, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, isn't going to work, well, then you're also telling, 50, 70 years worth of expertise, hasn't worked. And we know that it has. So it's very rare where I get much pushback from a business owner.
Well, that's good. I'm surprised, but that's excellent. What industries do you like to work with? Like, which ones do you feel like you're more of a fit with, and which ones are more alien to you that you don't really deal with?
Yeah, I would say I'll start with the alien. Like, I would say, and just total transparency, that like food service, restaurant, food and beverage, I feel like that's one that I don't have a really good handle on, quite frankly. I feel like that one's a bit of a different beast. A lot of cash. Yes, can I help? I have worked with restaurants before, but I just feel like it's less, I make less of an impact there. But, otherwise, I've worked, what I really love about what I do and what I really love about the system is it's pretty agnostic in terms of industries. It can be professional services or just services. It works there. It can be products, like hard products. It can be tech and software. It can be, landscaping, car wash, as I mentioned, human resources consulting, placement agencies, marketing agencies, coaching businesses. I helped a farm a couple of years ago. So, like I say, the principles are pretty sound. I put a big bow around them and made them accessible to majority of small business owners. And that's a lot of the value that I feel that I bring to the table and that I have brought to the table. And, and also this idea that we just talked about, where I really give permission to that business owner to be like, you know what, this business is here to make your life better. And if it's not doing that, we have some work to do, but we can get it done, and we can make sure that you are really enjoying the process of running this profitable, impactful business.
I don't know, any stories of strange one-off industries you've been in that were just out there? Like, have you ever helped a funeral home or just some strange business?
That's funny. The farm was interesting. I have to tell you, that farm was like, cause it wasn't like it was a goat farm, like goat meat, which is really big in the immigrant community. Like, again, the reason why I love my job, I learn so much every time I get to peek under the hood of another business in another industry. I just learn so much. And so that was a really interesting, working with, immigrant farmers, trying to serve the immigrant community, Yeah, really interesting. That wouldn't have been one that I would have thought that would ever work with goat farmers, but it did.
Did you have to do anything unusual to make it work?
No, I wouldn't say. It was really interesting. Actually, I tell this story in the book about them is that they, when they articulate, one of the things we do fairly early on in the process is try to really get clear on articulating the vision of the business. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? But like, what, and they articulated this vision for their business, which was essentially to be the Canada's number one producer of goat meat and other high quality meats or something like that. And, this was a farm in Atlantic Canada, and, Atlantic Canada is a small part of Canada. And if you're saying, if you're going to stand up and tell me you're going to be the number one in all of Canada, that's a pretty bold vision. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, all right. Like I'm not here to tell you what your vision should or shouldn't be. I'm here just to help you articulate and clarify it. And wouldn't you know that within 3 months, maybe even less of that, their farm was featured in the Globe and Mail, which is, I don't know if you know this, but it's Canada's biggest national newspaper. And it was in the Saturday edition, which is the most read newspaper in all of Canada. And in the feature section of the Saturday Globe and Mail, there they were. There was a big story about, how they're immigrant farmers and trying to serve the immigrant community. And
it's cool.
Yeah. So that was really neat because, it's not to say that their vision happened overnight, but when you put something like that down on paper, you articulate it, you put it out into the universe, it's weird how things happen. And, the fact that they are, in Canada's national newspaper on the Saturday edition with a big, does that happen without clearly articulating their vision that you want to be across Canada? Maybe, maybe not, but it's a pretty interesting coincidence.
Yeah, that's really weird. Huh. Well, very cool. How can people reach you that would be good candidates for you to work with? Like, what would make someone a good candidate versus not so good? And again, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, so typically I work with businesses that are, like I say, on the smaller end of small business. There really isn't a hard and fast rule about it. In the book, I call it 500K to 5 million in revenue, like 5 to 50 employees, something like that. I work with businesses that are much larger than that. And so if you're listening and you're running a business and you're kind of in that range, you've had some success, probably been in business at least 3 years, and you're experiencing this success paradox that we talked about earlier. You're feeling that things are starting to get disorganized, that entropy is setting in, communication breakdowns, lack of alignment, all that stuff. And you're not, you're feeling in your gut, like, is this really what owning the business is all about? Like, is this really what I signed up for? You're probably a good candidate to reach out and maybe have a discussion with me, or at the very least pick up the book, because you can get a lot done just by reading the book in your business. So you can find me at thewholepiesystem.com. That's the website. I tend to spend most of my social time on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. What else can I tell you? And the book is Getting the Whole Pie, and you'll find that on Amazon.
It would be funny if you had a reward ceremony where you smushed a pie into their face, they really made it. That would be a good outcome. It'd be funny, You wanted the whole pie, here you go.
You now have the whole pie. Yeah, it'd be kind of be like the old, that ice bucket challenge from a few years ago. It's like, I could see that going pretty viral. Yeah,
that's
thank
funny.
you. Good idea, Rich. Thank you.
I guess, yeah. Well, no worries. Well, Andy, thank you for what you do, and thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thanks, Richard.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.